Welcome to this explainer, where we're diving straight into a recent pronunciation diagnostic. We're going to break down the objective phonetic data today, and we're doing it with zero sugarcoating. Based on American English standards, where a native speaker scores a perfect 100 and a baseline CEFR A2 level scores a 10, we're going to analyze the exact specific areas that require immediate intervention.
Here is how we're breaking this down. First, the overall evaluation score. Second, phonemic deviations. Third, lexical diagnostics. Fourth, syllabic word stress. And finally, sentence prosody.
All right, Section 1, the overall evaluation score.
So the overall pronunciation score here sits at exactly 28 out of 100. To put that in perspective, it's hovering just above that A2 baseline of 10. Now, the main reason it avoids dipping any lower is because the vowel realization in high-frequency function words is actually generally accurate. But, and this is a big but, a score of 28 means it critically fails to reach functional B1 intelligibility for content words. This low score is a direct result of pervasive phonemic substitutions, severe consonant cluster reductions, and structural insertions, which means extraneous syllables are literally just being added into words.
Moving right along to Section 2, phonemic deviations. When we look at the phonetic data, the structural breakdown is pretty massive. We'll start with the most severe deviations first. The absolute biggest failure points here are the L and R phonemes. They are constantly converging, scoring an alarming 15 and 20, respectively.
This data brilliantly shows exactly how these micro-level errors are actively destroying the core meaning of the target words. Take the L sound, scoring a 15. We're seeing an alveolar tap or an R substitution, which completely mutates a word like blueberries into bruber. Then for the R phoneme at 20, there's intrusive rhoticity, basically inserting R sounds where they absolutely don't belong. For S scoring 30, it's completely omitted in word final clusters. This strips away grammatical pluralization, turning forests into forest. The data also flags major issues with the A vowel scoring 35 due to distortion and the G consonant at 40 because it's completely dropped or elided.
Let's dig into Section 3, lexical diagnostics.
Looking at the top 10 target words that need immediate improvement, the lowest scores show a total collapse of word structure. Blueberries gets a 15. It's just littered with L to R substitutions and inserted syllables, coming out as brewberries. Blogger also bombs with a 15. The medial alar plosive G is totally gone, mutating it into broya. Spot sits at 20, forests at 30 because of that missing final S, and appreciate gets a 40 due to severe phonetic reduction and blurred boundaries.
Let's pause on target word number 3 for a second. This perfectly highlights what happens when vowel space distortion and rhotic intrusion force a merge. The target is spots, but it's realized as sports. The lexical meaning of the word is completely altered. We're not just talking about an accent here, it's a critical miscommunication of the word's fundamental identity. Finishing up our top 10 list, even the slightly higher scoring words suffer from consistent mechanical failures. Cultural scores 45 because the dark L is entirely missing. Porridge hits 50 since the final affricate softens up too much. Smoothies, also at 50, has issues because the voiced dental fricative lacks sufficient voicing and sounds more like a hard stop consonant. Nutrient sits at 55 due to a really muddy transition in the tri cluster, and finally, generation capsulist at 60 because the initial affricate is imprecise and centralized. Okay, Section 4, syllabic word stress. Now, if we isolate the top 5 deviations in word stress, going from most to least severe, we see that structural insertions do more than just add syllables. They completely ruin the rhythm. With blueberries scoring a 15, tacking on those extra sounds to make brewberries destroys the required primary trochaic stress pattern. Blogger at 20 loses its medial syllables, wrecking the primary-secondary stress relationship. Then we have appreciate at 35, nutrients at 45, and generation at 50. All of them fail to establish the correct primary stress, making the word sound structurally flat without the right pitch duration.
To really highlight this, just look at appreciate. When you fail to isolate and punch that primary stress on the antepenultimate syllable, the pre, the whole word just falls flat. Instead of a distinct energetic peak right there, what we get is a monotonic string of sounds. And honestly, we see this flattening effect almost every single time a multisyllabic word is attempted.
And finally, Section 5, sentence prosody. Zooming out to the macro application level, let's look at the top 3 severe prosodic errors.
The absolute worst one, coming in with a score of 20, is a complete failure to recognize syntactic boundaries. Specifically, the speaker entirely ignored the period right before the phrase "for fins." The required pitch drop and the durational pause were just skipped over, which runs two distinct sentences together and utterly destroys the sentence-level rhythm of the paragraph. The clinical data points to two other massive failures here too. Scoring a 35 is phrasal contrast flattening. The delivery is just this monotonic block. It completely misses the required rhythmic peaks on vital content words like tradition and nature. And then, scoring a 40 is list intonation failure. When listing items in the text, like smaller, tastier, and richer, the speaker entirely ignores the required rising pitch on those first two items, as well as the terminal falling pitch on the final one. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about this question. How do these tiny, micro-level phonetic substitutions cascade into a complete breakdown of macro-level communicative prosody? Well, the data proves it definitively. You simply cannot build a house on a broken foundation. Nailing down individual consonant and vowel accuracy, along with correct syllable stress, is absolutely mandatory before higher-level sentence prosody can even be attempted. Until those L, R, and S deviations are completely corrected, that intelligibility score is going to remain frozen right at 28.